you are not a real senior engineer unless you have a...
Hello world, welcome. And today we have a very special guest, Michael. The leader of System Design Fight Club and senior software engineer at FAANG companies. We can actually disclose which particular company. And actually, yeah, Michael, can you please explain your opinion on this? Why people should care about their privacy?
So there's a couple of layers there actually. So there's first like why I don't disclose my company. There's also why I don't like my name and my face on stuff, which is kind of like a separate item with a slightly different reasoning. The first one with the companies is just that like I'm not a representative and not a spokesperson for my company, and I don't want to go through the hurdles for that. And I know that like if I did just kind of show up and talk like I am, like, you know, hey, I work at XYZ company, that would give them a very easy excuse to fire me for whatever they want, and I don't want to do that. That was even in the training, I think, at Amazon. I can say that I'm ex-Amazon because I don't work there anymore, and so I feel comfortable with that. But if I was there right now, that was even in the training as a new hire. It's like, hey, you can't say that you work at Amazon, and that's a really easy excuse to fire someone. As for my face and my full name, though, I believe in a work-life separation. I know that there's like the work-life harmony thing that Jeff Bezos once said, which I think is that's some Kool-Aid right there. That's some Kool-Aid. You should not have your family kind of like. I think there should be a separation between your personal life and your coworkers. You shouldn't mistake your coworkers as friends. It's kind of easy to do as a new grad, I think, in particular, is to mistake your coworkers for friends. You should be friendly with them, but I wouldn't treat them in the same way as you would a personal friend from college, where like they're a person that you would like take to the bar on a weekend and like drink and have fun and like be really personal and open with. There's a very clear separation there. And I feel that I should kind of do the same thing with my own content, is that like I don't put my face on my thumbnails in particular, because it's like then my coworkers would, you know, they chat with me all day and then they go home in the evening and then they see my stupid face again on the thumbnails on YouTube when they're trying to unwind. And I kind of avoid that.
I see your point. Yeah. Well, it's a good point. I think, yeah, separation between your life and work, it's crucial, especially when you need to execute sometimes. some complicated decision, you know.
Well, and then there's also like if even then there's also like some of my earlier content was also a little bit more naive, and so you know, there's the people that are my fans of my content and they view it and they like it. But you know, my click-through rate's only like 2% or something. There's only like, of the people that see the impression from my videos, only 2% actually click through and get like a view. So for every 2 clicks, there's, you know, 98 people that probably are a little bit annoyed by my content and don't like seeing my face all the time. And
I think it's a double-edged sword, because showing your face allow people to be. You provide more trust to the people, so you kind of show your face and people can trust you more. That's my opinion. And yeah, but anyway, I think it's a good from you know any strategy is good, you know, because for different reasons. And yeah, talking about YouTube, you help thousands of people to prepare for system design interviews. That's great. You're doing a great job, and that's all for free. So people who want to prepare for system design Fight Club YouTube channel is just great pieces of content. Yeah, you're a really seasoned guy. Yeah, I'm just surprised.
I'm not planning on paywalling any of my content ever either. Even if I make a book, I'd actually plan on releasing it as a PDF for free.
Wow, that's
great. I don't want to paywall any of my content.
Well, that's actually interesting part, because, you know, people will. Do you think if you will release the book for free, will people value it the same way if you would charge at least like
about that
$10,
actually
$20?
Is that like, so we wanted to talk about some of my favorite books at some point. One of them is Don Martin's System Design Primer, which is free. And you know, it's free and it's just a PDF. I actually printed it off, and it's I just printed it off at Kinko's, and it's one of these two that I have here.
We will move to that, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, tell me please, what are your feeling about tech influencers on YouTube and in general? Yeah.
It's that I think that's where I wanted to get with showing your face on stuff, and sometimes people can get a little more hung up with marketing their stuff and trying to some people are a little bit better at what's called content marketing than creating high quality content. Sometimes presentation kind of make something seem like a better resource than it is. So if it's really cleaned up diagrams, really well communicated stuff. So like Alex Shu's content it's good. I like the content itself too, but he also is really good at making some pretty diagrams is what I'd say. And in some cases, there's a few instances where I can see people that have like made really pretty diagrams. So if you try and like dig into it a little bit, it's actually there's some little flaws, like they're trying to do a full table scan on an OLTP database or something, or like they have this thing where they're like, oh, box for a service, a server, it's using a heap, which is LLD. That's a object-oriented programming thing.
LLD, what
low level design versus high level design.
Okay,
It's another thing. It's as a new grad, sometimes instead of having a system design interview, you would have a object-oriented programming interview, and that would be referred to as LLD as opposed to HLD, which is where you're talking about components like Kafka instead.
Yeah, so we're going deeper, and you providing few options like this database better for in these cases, this database better for these cases, depends of
that's HLD. Yeah.
Each high level design.
High level design.
Okay,
yeah. High level is when it's components like Kafka.
Okay.
LLD is when
and
you like
low level design when they ask you to implement something right away, or
it's when you're going to write a little bit of code, and it's designing classes. It's like design patterns. Okay. So it's like there's another guy. I think he has a channel called Concepts and Coding or something. And he talks about like the singleton pattern. He talks about stuff like that, but that's design patterns, it's code. It's not about actual.
I think I never like had this kind of interview. It was like lead code problems usually, and then system design. And for me, it was really surprising that I came in the United States as a mobile engineer, and I was trying to, to jump into the company as a mobile engineer, especially iOS engineer. But I was surprised that at FAANG companies, like they ask me actually server-side system design, and I would like to talk with you about it because. For me, I feel it a bit unfair because like the people who work like 5 years as mobile engineers can't compete in system design with the backend engineers in a server-side system design. Yeah. But at the vice versa situation, I bet many backend engineers will be just grilled on front end and mobile.
I actually also came from a front end background. Actually, my first job out of college at a different company than Amazon. Actually, I did a lot of stuff with AngularJS. Then actually, when I was hired at Amazon, I was primarily just React.js for the first year or two. And then it was kind of like more into the back end, but like, yeah, I definitely came from a front end background as well. And I actually did have a system design interview when I was interviewing at Amazon. I got down level to SD1.
You had backend system design or front end?
It was just full stack system design. They just treated me like a backend engineer.
That's why I think they low level you because they expect you perform as a backend engineer.
I studied for it though. I studied this book. This was my first system design book I ever got, and that was what I bought and studied for it. Book. It's good. I've maybe read the whole thing cover to cover one time, but in general, I've just kind of like read through it at just whatever interests me the most. You're not supposed to read it cover to cover like a novel. The way you read is like just whatever you're particularly interested in at any given time. In fact, there's I think around chapter 4 or 5 or something, there's a whole section on isolation, which is for transactions, and that's probably actually one of the last things you want to read. And it's like right in the middle, and it's very dry, and I think a lot of people that go in with the wrong approach, they put down the book when they get to there. In fact, even in 2 or 3, I think they talk about LSM trees, and that's also something that you should just skim it the first time. You should just skim it the first time.
So you like when the Amazon, so you had an interview at Amazon, right, as a front-end engineer, and they just provide you questions. They give you questions for backend system design, and then you got the offer, but they down level you. Did you take it as a challenge? That's why you deep you dive so deep into system design?
Well, again, going into the whole like, is it really fair to give system design to front end engineers? And I actually do think there's at least some fairness to it. There still is like the whole thing of like CDNs, and then there's like, you have WebSockets versus API calls, but then there's also like back end for front end design versus GraphQL or multiple API calls. I actually have a specific video on my channel on the design for a dashboard. And it specifically is oriented around some bigger trade-offs that you would make on the job as a front-end engineer in terms of it's more towards full stack than front-end only though. So I do agree there's some unfairness there if you're going specifically for front-end. But I also feel that it is actually a wrong mentality of companies to entirely just have their front-end and back-end engineers interacting like via throwing stuff over a wall. I think that's not good, because in order to have the most efficiently working and performing front end, you actually need to be full stack. You need to be able to know about how, because latency is really important. Page load times are crucial. And then in order to make sure those pages are loading fast, you need to be able to make some judgment calls on the back end itself that they would have otherwise not known about.
Yeah, of course, and you can have a dialogue with the backend people, like backend folks, and suggest some better solution from front-end perspective. Yeah, because as you say, like it's crucial to know like API calls and socket communication, because as a front-end engineer, you use them. Like for example, if you create some chat like Messenger, you're gonna use socket. You're not gonna use like regular API. And in fact, many people think that like, but regular API call, like just HTTP connection, it's also socket underneath, and that's why you need to understand that if you open connection once from front end, you don't need to open connection again with your server, because it's still open.
As long as you're using a WebSocket, you're not using the plain old API calls. But I really feel that there's some obvious things that about in the front end that really slow down page load times, like having a whole bunch of API calls. And so there is system design that you're aware of that really affects page performance. And so there's some that make sense, but you strictly have to be going into a full stack role. And as front end only, it definitely does not make sense to have system design.
Okay, I see. But okay, who do you think have a better let's say understanding and usage of multi-threading system? Front-end people, like mobile, front-end or back-end? Front-end.
So like if doing back-end concurrency properly is rare. So a lot of people are aware that like, hey, if you're going to have a lot of connections for one of those apps like WhatsApp or something, a lot of the times you use Erlang or Elixir or something, where you're able to do a whole lot of connections at once, and it's optimized for that. And so they're aware of that, but like a lot of the times you have the requests come in, and then you make a whole bunch of API calls. You don't actually parallelize them properly. You usually do one call and then the next and then the next on the back end. And so like if you're doing it properly, you're probably going to be using like akka, the actor model framework, and Spring. If you're not doing that, you're not having all those API calls go off at once, and you're using information from one API call into the next, and it's synchronous. Yeah. And I don't think they realize that they're doing synchronous API calls like that.
You think they don't realize it?
I don't think they realize it. No. I don't think they realize that they're actually doing these API calls synchronously, and that there's an alternative to kick them off at once. I mean, it's surprising because, well, it's usually not worth it to make them all asynchronous and happen at once like that, because that adds complexity to your back end. And a lot of the times you don't care.
Handle failures and stuff. If one failed, then
there's that, but it's just having them all kicked off at once. A lot of finer tuning things for squeezing the most performance out of your system as possible are just not worth it. Otherwise, we'd be writing our backend services in C, right? And so it's a lot more of a human resources and pumping out business value rather than squeezing the most speed out of your backend. But if you really did care about squeezing out the most speed, then you'd make it more concurrent. But on the front end, though, you care more about speed on the front end. It seems like you care a lot more about having all those API calls kicked off at once, and it's easier to do, I feel, in React.js than it is in the back end, where you'd have to do something with Akka. And I think front-end engineers are just equipped with better tools for handling concurrency, and there's stuff like type aheads. So for example, type aheads, I had to work on something that's basically a type ahead myself. Primogen also he got hired by Netflix because he had experience with RxJS, which is one of those things that has really heavy concurrency on the front end. It's a lot more rare, I feel, to see a requirement for experience with Akka than to do that kind of stuff. It's more rare to see a requirement for really solid concurrency understanding on the back end than the front end. It's actually even a common front end interview question is that you'll see questions like implementing promise.all or like rate limiting on promises kicking off at once. You get those more frequently in front end positions than back end positions. So I definitely think you have more concurrency understanding as a front end engineer than a back end engineer. It's interesting.
So a front end engineer, they should be more seasoned in concurrency, and on top of that, they also should know all stuff backend people know.
Yes.
So it seems like,
and yet you get a little lower pay, and so it's like if you just change your resume off and start omitting React.js, you're going to be killing it.
So that's actually interesting stuff, because I honestly believe that the easiest way to start software engineering is from front end. The easiest one is like web development, then a little bit complicated, it's mobile development because you have storage on your device in comparison with like you have that database.
Well, and then also you're using Java threads probably. Like if you're doing mobile development, you might be working with the Android framework, and so then you're using the clunkier threading service provided through Java than if you're using the promises that you can get on the front end, where it's a lot easier.
I think it's kind of easier, but I think the biggest difference is that people can see result of their work immediately on the screen. So for people who just started it's much easier to see, write some code and just not only see the logs as in backend, but also see like some button moved from left corner to the middle. You can click this button for people like visually see how the code works. I think it's much easier to start software engineering. So from this perspective, it's an interesting point that you give me some insight that being a front-end engineer at FAANG companies, like entire one company, it's a lot more complicated, and you need to have like a lot more knowledge in comparison with just
it's more software. Rare to get an interview question about concurrency as a back-end engineer than a front-end engineer. And as a front-end engineer, it's like you're going to see promise.all or whatever. Well, for the back end, you typically do not see threading questions asked.
Okay, moving to system design. I'm curious, tell a story how you become that good at system design.
I've owned this book for like 5 years, and I got most of these books within the last year and a half, probably.
Tell me top 5 books for system design. Okay, let's dive into that. So.
Okay. So my favorite is definitely this is the very first one that I got, is Designing Data Intensive Applications. Here, I'm gonna put the sticky note on the back. So my favorite system design book is Designing Data Intensive Applications.
What's your favorite book?
It's aged really well. First of all, it's a theory only book. It's not applied problems, but it has great breadth and depth. It is like really well balanced in terms of breadth and depth. It covers like everything you need, and it's like just enough magically. I mean, it does go a little, it's maybe a little bit deeper than you need in some spots, but it's easier to just kind of like skim it. And it's probably, it's just like this rat's nest that's really, as long as you go into it with that mentality of jumping around and not trying to read it like a novel, it's a rat's nest, and it is just such a curiosity hook. It just pulls me in. It sucks me into like going all around through the book. You can already kind of see that I have a bunch of like dog ears on this.
So it's like a collection of good notes about system design. It's not like it's not like storytelling. It's just a bunch of topics, and you just open one topic and you dive into this.
When I first read a book, the first thing I actually look at is the index or the glossary in the front, the table of contents. That's the first thing I do, and I look and I start taking notes about just the table of contents for stuff that I haven't seen in my other books. So like when I was going through database internals, I was like, oh, this guy is like, actually this has like 6 different flavors of Paxos described in it. That is crazy. And then I flip straight to that. I don't try and read the first chapters. I go straight into the chunk about Paxos.
Yeah, I see. Well,
So you're not supposed to read it like a novel, like
yeah,
cover to cover.
that's a good, actually good advice, because I tried. I actually started reading this book as a novel, and I'm like, it's pretty dense. So I read like few topics, and like, I need some time to just, to just think about it. I need like read one topic, and I don't know, like maybe 3, 4, 5 days a week to absorb the information, to like laying down.
I've actually like probably read the whole book like 3 to 5 times, but only once cover to cover, and that was like more towards the end when I was trying to make sure that I've actually touched every page.
So when you stop working with this book, when you stop reading this book and you move to the next book, what was the driving moment when you understood that it's not enough for you? This book, it's not enough.
It still is enough. I just haven't gone in. So he has like references at the end of every chapter, and I haven't gone through those yet. So I mean, it still does have more content in there, but it's just that it's not the most efficient way of digging further. Is that like now I'm at the point where I'd be scraping at it more. So if I read through it again, I think there is still more stuff that I would learn. It's just that it's past the point of efficiency right now. Yeah.
So we can say that this book is crucial for people who want to be like L5 at Amazon or L4 at Google or Meta, or like middle engineers.
I would say that you are not a real senior engineer unless you have a physical copy of this book. Yeah, I would say that. You are not a real senior engineer unless you have a physical copy of this book.
Yeah. Then, okay. We can start the witch hunt,
What was that?
Witch hunt across senior engineers, like witch hunt,
Chant?
Witch, like, witch hunt.
Witch hunt? Oh, for
senior engineers.
So there's title inflation, and that's basically what I was trying to say right there, is that like you're not really being held to the same bar as like a FAANG senior engineer if you don't have a physical copy of this thing.
So this is like top 1, right? And top like second book which you jump after that, or which you gonna recommend?
Well, so this isn't the first one you should read, but it is one of my favorite books of all time. I have the whole infographic of mine sorted in order of quality, but that's not in the order in which you should approach them. It's because like the best material might be white papers, and those are really bad for mid-level engineers to try and jump into first. So it's not sorted by order in which you tackle it. It's not like sorted like a roadmap. The very first thing that I think you should read ever, though, is Don Martin's System Design Primer. I do actually have it printed out. It's I think it's here in the middle of the stack.
Like PDF which you referred to.
Yeah, I literally printed out Don Martin's System Design Primer.
So this is top two. This is like second place in your...
Yeah, so second place, Don Martin System Design Primer. I really did print it out because you digest information better when it's physical and not on your computer screen. And he does have like a special .sh file or something for generating the PDF. And so then I just took it to Kinko's and I printed it off.
What's special about this book?
It's what you should read before you dive into this one. It's pure breadth.
So this one is a starter basically.
It's your first pass through the full band of all the different topics. This is like a great first pass into all the concepts and stuff.
Okay, so this is appetizers.
This is like just getting a lay of the land and just kind of like knowing what all is out there. And it actually does have really solid coverage on load balancers. I don't think that DDIA actually covers load balancers that well. This one actually might cover load balancers a little bit better than that. But it's for your first pass through all the concepts.
So this is first book to read, but we like you rank it as a second, like according to value from the book, right? It's second one.
It's second, but it's a great example of like just because it's free doesn't mean it's bad. It's like you think like, oh, this is just free out on the internet. That doesn't mean that it's any worse than grokking. This is actually a better book than grokking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and top 3 as number 3.
All right. Okay. So I definitely want to cover Stanley Chiang's, but I'm not going to do that one next. I should probably do
yeah, sure.
this one by Alex Shu next. Yeah.
Alex Shu, yeah, because like I watched few of your videos and you referred to Alex Shu. You're like, oh, Alex Shu has a good explanation on this example or on that example.
He only covers like one approach to each problem. I mean, look at all those notes that I took on it. Still, it's
looks like you dive deeper into
I'm not as big of a fan of volume 1, but volume 2 is volume 2 is pretty solid.
What's the difference between volume 1 and volume 2? It's just amount of problems, different problems.
It's a fully different problem set, and then geez, do I have? Let's pull up volume.
Yeah,
1.
just give me or put it on the floor. It's all right. Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna put it on the floor.
Okay. We should respect the books. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Just kind of look at the size of them. It's you can just kind of see by the it's twice as thick. Volume 2 is twice as thick as volume 1. It's he wrote it later. It's a different problem set, and then he covers them deeper. I actually think that this is probably really controversial. I'm suspecting that his co-author Sam Lamb is actually probably the secret sauce to the quality of this book, though.
I see what you're
he
saying.
picked up a new co-author for this one, and then he dropped Sam Lamb. I don't know how to pronounce his name that well. Sorry. He dropped this author when he moved on to his machine learning book. I didn't actually bring that one with me. I haven't gone through that one a whole lot yet, but he dropped him for that. I suspect that there's a quality drop, but this one was like it's in my A tier, and it's like it's just look at the size of it. I know like just that sounds absurd, is that it might be 200 pages of trash, but it's high quality.
Really
yeah.
Good. So it's your top 3.
It's in my this is the best applied problems book on the market right now. This is definitely the best applied problems book on the market.
So we can say that this like PDF book top 2, it's just appetizer. We start from this book, then we go into the
I would actually not recommend DDIA next. I think you would maybe want to do System Design Primer first, and then this book second.
Okay, and why would you recommend it as a second book?
Well, so as a mid-level engineer, you don't even really need to know the word Paxos. You probably don't actually need to know the word Paxos as a mid-level engineer. You've gotten an overview of message brokers and stuff in Don Martin's System Design Primer. And then before really digging into like the internals of it, which you kind of do in DDIA, you should maybe know a little bit about how to use it.
So to move from middle engineer to senior engineer, that's the moment when you apply TDIA book.
You should have, I feel that as a senior engineer, you should probably have like read DDIA cover to cover. As a mid-level engineer, you should maybe just kind of have like skimmed it or something. But like I feel like as a senior engineer, you should really be digging into DDIA pretty thoroughly. Yeah.
And as a principal, you need to write your own book.
Well, actually, there's a guy that one of my books, it's Understanding Distributed Systems. He was at Microsoft and he wrote his book, and then soon after he actually got hired as a principal engineer at Amazon in AWS working on DynamoDB. It's Roberto Vitillo. I feel like the book is what got him hired as a principal engineer.
Nice. It's
so
nice.
In all seriousness, maybe.
Okay, let's go through really quick through these books, like just sentence about each of them. Like we covered top 3 books. Yeah, and but you have like a bunch of them. How many books you read?
I literally have 20 books. I haven't brought them all with me.
Yeah,
this is only like 11 right here. I literally have 20 physical books on system design.
You read all of them?
I've at least skimmed them all. One of them is like Lewis Lynn's book. He's actually like a product manager, and so I don't feel like I can squeeze as much knowledge out of that as I could out of like DDIA or something like that. So I've at least skimmed them all, but not read cover to cover, just because some of them are not necessarily high quality.
I see. And so let's go like you have 11 of them. Let's just give characteristic.
One at a time. All right. So
we cover like,
I think I've made all the ones that I definitely have something to say. I brought all the ones that I definitely have something to say about. So I think it would be a good idea to just go through them one at a time.
Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. So here at the top, we've got, Alex Shu's Volume 2. I think it's better than the first one by a huge amount. It's the best applied problems book on the market right now. Yeah,
okay.
Hands down. It is. I've trashed him a couple of times, but yeah, I think it's pretty. Yeah. I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, it's great. Byte to byte, byte go. Okay, this is nice. Well, yeah, you have a bunch of notes here.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like what you may I check what's your notes there?
Sure. I guess you could skim it. Some of them are just little bookmarks, like dog ears. So like sometimes when I'm reviewing a problem that's really similar, I might look through Alex Shu's a little bit. Sometimes I'll look at Grokking a little bit.
Oh, okay. So just empty one.
It's just a similar problem sometimes.
Yeah, great.
All right. And then we got Alex Shu Volume 1. It's his first printed book. I think he actually did have a book before this that is a little bit less known. He wasn't really as well known, I think, when this one came out, and I think there's actually a couple of other books on the market that are a little bit higher
But you still
quality.
recommend this book, right?
If you're a mid-level engineer, it might be a little bit more approachable than Volume 2, but it's not, the solutions are actually not as high quality as Volume 2.
I see.
So I'm a little bit more on the fence about this one. I might actually recommend some other ones a little bit more than this.
Okay, so this book, we can say that's optional book.
Yeah,
It's not-
I'd say Volume 1 is maybe optional.
Because
Volume 2, though, required.
I honestly gonna doubt that people gonna read 20 books. You know, like that's your. That's
Oh, no,
your-
I'm crazy. Oh, yeah,
man.
no, I am
you're
crazy.
Just crazy on that. You know, like people at most will read like maybe one book, and not from cover to cover. Just, but
No,
yeah.
we'll get to that with my superpower later.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we can move on to the next.
So we not recommend this as a Alex Shu first volume
I wouldn't I mean, it is good. It's it might even be better than any book I end up writing, but it's not one of my favorites, to say that. He's a great author, and Volume 2 is, huge thumbs up, but Volume 1, I'm not quite so sure about it.
Got it.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So-
Born ready.
This is actually not a system design book. It's a book on TLA Plus, but it's written by Leslie Lamport, who's the guy that invented Paxos. He coined the term
Paxos.
sequential consistency. He coined the term causal consistency. So sequential consistency, causal consistency. It's actually a book about how to formally verify that a distributed system is correct. And
Nice.
it's you are trying to become a staff engineer if you're going to pick this up. It's not. It's not a system design book. It's a TLA plus book.
What is TLA? What stands for?
It's a programming language
TLA.
for specifying distributed systems.
Okay.
So it's like it's like Prolog. It's kind of like Prolog, but specifically for distributed systems. And there's actually some AWS services that are specified in TLA plus. They are actually using TLA plus in AWS.
Interesting.
And it's for when you're working on something like DynamoDB and you're going to add a feature and you want to make sure that there's not any race conditions. This will formally prove that there aren't any race conditions.
So it's like kind of like protocol you need to follow to test your system design.
It's it's like, I think you would write it out during the design doc phase, and then
okay.
you translate it into Rust as best as you can or something. Actually, Leslie Lamport works at Microsoft in Azure, and I heard that he had specified Cosmos DB at 5 different consistency levels, all in TLA plus. So like even over in Azure, they're doing that too. And he himself used TLA plus for Cosmos DB. That's kind of like the Azure equivalent of DynamoDB.
I got you. Nice. So it's like staff engineer level book.
It's a TLA plus book, but like if you really want to dive into it like me, there's some really cool stuff in here, and he does actually talk about so specifically liveness versus the other thing, which was like the difference between linearizability and like the what is it, like serializability or something. It was the difference between total ordering and getting that real-time constraint, and he talks about it in TLA plus and like how to specify it, I think, in TLA plus. And he also does talk about how to create a serial consistency RAM or memory thing or registers. And it's you're going to learn about consistency at those top levels and the differences between them if you're going through this. Yeah.
So this book about more like how to use TLA as a tool.
It's more about TLA plus.
Okay.
It's a TLA plus book, not a system design book itself. But you will learn about the differences between those top levels of consistency if you're getting into it, which is pretty rare to find.
We will make a title that is staff engineer level book.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Nice. Let's move to the next one. Yeah, this one.
All right. Well, so this is,
You said a few words about that.
Don Martin System Design Primer. Again, just because it's free doesn't mean it's bad. This is this is well earned in the A tier. It's, just because you think it's on the internet and it's just like some kind of GitHub repo. No, this is, I think it's actually better than grokking. It's higher quality material than
Nice.
grokking.
And in terms of how this book aging, like
It's aging. So I think a lot of the theory books are aging pretty well, and this one is aging pretty well as well. I think a lot of the content that is more theory than applied problems is just aging pretty solid.
I see.
So this one's holding up pretty well too, because I think it's kind of been around for like at least 6 years.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. So it's fresh book. We could say.
It still is. I don't know if I would call it fresh, but it is still relevant right now. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And next material.
So again, this is my favorite book of all time, Designing Data-Intensive Applications. It's theory.
The most popular book about system design.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite. It is a theory book, not an applied problems book. Martin Kleppman wrote it. I talk about him a lot, and if you can even look at his other blog posts and like chats at like conferences, and he's like just a total wealth of information. It's it's like the best balance of breadth and depth. Actually, it's the best depth that you can get for such a massive breadth, like possible. Anything else that tries to go deeper ends up missing a lot of significant topics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, but
again,
it's not the first book you should read.
I don't. Yeah, no, you should look at System Design Primer first.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
You want to move on?
Advice. Yeah, sure. Let's go. Yeah, and next one is...
This one is so underrated. It's Stanley Chiang's book. No, this one is ferociously underrated. It's better than Alex Schu's Volume 1. It's an applied problems book. Actually, I think he covers concepts in like the first half of it, and I don't know. I don't really go into that because I either buy a book for the theory content or for the applied problems content. And if he just has some like primer information on theory, it's not going to be as deep as DDIA. So I just kind of skip past that. And then I looked at the problem stuff. He has two full chapters on messaging apps, 2 full chapters, and they're way deeper than what you're going to get from, that's also covered by Alex Schu in Volume 1. And it's way deeper than that, way deeper than grokking too. He really impressed me in a couple of chapters in this. It's ferociously underrated.
I see. But
it's one of my top 5 favorite books.
Okay, so would you rate it like top 3, top 5, top 4?
I'd put it at either 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably put it at 4 or 5.
That's actually interesting because I think this book people should open when they try to prepare for interview and not just looking for some new knowledge.
It might be a good alternative to Volume 1 of Alex Schu's books. Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Great. Let's move on.
Yeah. And like there's no hype about this. Like nobody is talking about this on Blind or on LinkedIn like they are about Alex Schu's content. So it's crazy how underrated and how underhyped it is.
Alex Schu has better marketing.
He has great content marketing skills, and the content is good too. But it just is unfortunate when you look at some of the other authors that are also putting out some great stuff. Is like there's a content marketing aspect. Alex Schu is definitely good at content marketing. The content is good too, but again,
marketing is better.
Content marketing skills is maybe what's really the magic formula for him.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense. 21st century. You need to be able to market your product.
Marketing really sometimes when you look at the grifters in system design, you can really tell that sometimes there's people that have managed to make a name of themselves purely because they're loud, not because they're good.
Well, that definitely sounds like nowadays, like most of the people I just need someone who they can trust. And that's kind of like ability to market yourself and your product.
It's really hard for system design relative to coding. So like system design is kind of like a newer interview concept than coding for sure.
And it's really opinionated, right? So it's opinionated. So you can't have a right answer for it.
It's a lot harder to tell that something's right or not.
Yes.
Like with code, it either runs or it doesn't, and it passes the test cases or not. And then you can also look at the runtime pretty quick. But with system design, it's sometimes is a lot harder to kind of like pick at like if something's actually wrong or not. Like, do we really need this broker here or not? And that can actually get that one, I think, is one of the more opinionated pieces of it.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people looking for who they can trust, because they can I trust his opinion. His opinion is right. So with system design content, I think that you look at an author's credentials a lot more than you would with coding stuff. So like with coding, there's elements of programming interviews, which is
pretty well renowned. And I have no idea what that guy's background is while there's cracking the coding interview where Gail Lockman is a former Google engineer, and you just see like Google engineer, oh, well, of course the content's going to be good. While elements of programming interviews, he still is able to make the name for himself pretty well without me even knowing his credentials.
Yeah, see. Well, it's a valid point, yeah.
Yeah, but with system design, it's like you're basically not going to get any sales if you're not a FAANG engineer that's writing it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because like if you're really good at system design, why you not at FAANG? Or at least like, I don't know, tire.
Well, so system design skills are also not super relevant outside of FAANG, because like system design is when you have something that's getting really high traffic, where you're getting, 10,000 TPS or even 1 million TPS, and you're just not really going to see that typically outside of FAANG. So Pinterest definitely has services that get over 10 million TPS. I even interviewed with one of them, but it's like outside of big tech, you're not going to see system design. So like at small Midwest companies, they're still going to have coding interviews, but it just doesn't make sense for them to have system design interviews over there.
Yeah, I see, because like for Amazon, you need to be able, for example, DynamoDB need to be able to service for 100 millions of TPS per TPS, because especially during the Prime Day, when people ordering, you just need to be really, really responsive.
It's a distinctive problem to big tech, and so you can't really write a book about system design unless you have that hands-on experience with these big services that actually require 99.99% availability and stuff like that.
It's 5 stars.
Yeah.
They call it 5 stars, like when 99,999.
Oh, 5 nines.
5 nines.
No, 5 nines. Yeah.
5 nines,
yeah.
5 stars. Yeah.
So with like random Midwest companies, you don't require like 5 nines availability and stuff
Just
like that.
do it's enough.
I think a lot of people in college right now don't realize that FAANG engineers will usually have a pager.
Yeah.
And
or a mobile application.
Another thing that I think we might want to talk about a little bit is what experience with system design really looks like. Is that like if you don't own a pager. If you don't own a pager for the service that you're working on right now, you're not actually really getting experience with system design, because that a pager is a crucial tool to the availability of your service. Okay. And so if you don't own a pager, your service doesn't actually care about high availability, and so you're not forced to learn these concepts about high availability that you learn about in system design.
Well, it's an interesting perspective on being paged, like when you're on call.
Well, so you can work with big data as well, and you could have a really big Spark job over working for a Midwest company. A lot of them actually do have big data, but they don't care about availability. And so, I really feel that that's something that really differentiates system design a little bit more from just having big data, is that there's the availability requirement. And so it turns into a different problem than just high parallel processing, which is
I see what you're saying. That's actually a valid point, because like at FAANG you need to cover China, America, Africa, Europe, and you need to make it work. You need to transfer data from one partition or region to another one, and everywhere you should be available. So and if something falling, you gotta be paged.
Yeah, we should probably keep going through the books. I definitely have some other interesting things to go on this. So this one is Lewis Lin's book. I kind of got it purely because I'm on this mission to really, really dig into everything system design. And so he's a product manager. I'm not the biggest fan of him just right off. So that's what we were talking about with somebody's credentials kind of being a huge part of whether or not you can actually get sales, is that just because he's a product manager, he hasn't actually had to work with
Technical,
a pager.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just don't trust him as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he still should know the system, at least on helicopter view, how system works, at understanding problem which his team facing off. So, and kind of
he probably does kind of like get the overall picture pretty well.
Okay.
But I actually kind of want to dig into this a little bit more this evening now. But I just don't really trust him since he's from that product management background.
I see. Maybe it's a good book for managers.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So it's one of those ones that I call lower quality, where I'm like, should maybe be going for Alex Shu Volume 2 instead as an engineer, but like it's not necessarily as approachable as some of these ones that I'm calling lower quality, that don't have the details I'm looking for, is like Lewis Lin's Grokking or Alex Shu Volume 1. They don't dig as deeper into it, but it might be a little bit more approachable than Alex Shu Volume 2.
So this book is kind of like all right, but
I have an appreciation for people that are content creators. I know it takes work, and he's not a grifter like some of the content creators that I see out there. I think he's put authentic effort into it, and so I don't want to disparage his reputation or however I word it. Is that I think he's put some honest work into it. It's just not my favorite.
Got you. Let's go. Let's move on. Yeah. What else do you have? You have three
I literally did print out grokking. I did print out grokking, and I thumbed every single problem in it. I marked every problem in it.
This one is the most popular book.
I don't know why they. Yeah, it's. I think his branding is really well known. It's one of those instances of branding really being kind of important with product sales. Is that grokking the system design interview is like a key term in search results.
Yeah. And
so just having control over that term is actually kind of important.
I think it's because it was grokking the code interview, or like algorithm and data structure interview. So it was book about basically coding interviews, and that's kind of like pattern people have. Okay, now I need to grok system design.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the first pieces of content that had come out on system design applied problems. So there's been theory around for decades, actually, and we're going to get around to that, is that the theory stuff has been around for decades, but applied problems is a lot more fresh to like the last 10 years.
Okay.
And I think this is one of the first pieces of paid content that came out. I've been calling it bad like a lot, and I like to roast it quite a bit, but I think it's actually just aged poorly. So like before Alex Shu, what was really out there? So like when I had my first system design interview, I had DDIA, and then I also was seeing grokking pop up a little bit. I don't know why I didn't trust it, but like grokking was like one of the other terms that was getting thrown around like 8 years ago or 5 or something. So grokking was out there, and I think at the time it might have actually been the best material on the market for applied problems in system design. But I think now that there's Alex Shu, there's just better content out there, so it hasn't really aged as well. DDIA has aged like phenomenally well. Nobody can beat it. Other people have like tried to like cover the same content, like Understanding Distributed Systems by Roberto Vitillo. He's covered it. It hasn't been able to beat DDIA though. This one, I'm actually worried that my content is going to age this poorly. So that's why I don't want to roast him so well. I don't want to roast him too hard. Is that I'm actually worried that 5 years from now my own content's going to look a lot like grokking.
Well, but how you can prevent it?
It's like, since this is a newer topic, I feel that the expectations of system design interviews are even changing a little bit over the last few years. Now that there's better material on it, and the actual quality of the material is improving, and people are gaining this better awareness of the system design interview. I feel that is like changing the expectations, and then there's like different ways that people would actually be expecting to drill down into it. For example, I think I'm kind of one of the first people to really try to have a breadth of approaches to a problem.
Okay.
I saw that in like on LeetCode, you have multiple different approaches to the same coding problem. I was like, why don't we have that with system design, even though it should be more open to answer than with coding?
100%.
Yeah, and so it's like we should have multiple approaches with system design, and I think I'm kind of one of the first people to do that, and you don't really see that with some other ones. But I'm worried there's like other stuff that I'm just not seeing that's going to come up.
Maybe it's not the bad. Maybe it's not the bad thing that your content is gonna age because it just means that you can, especially if you can validate it, it means that you evolve with the system design. So, and now you can provide better approaches, and your audience can grow.
I am actually redoing some of my older videos. Like I recently redid my video on the URL shortener design, and I feel phenomenally better than my original approach from like 9 months ago. But I have all this content that is from 6+ months ago that I'm starting to have second thoughts about.
So you grew with the content.
I did, but like if I keep growing, then it's like how many I might end up doing URL shortener 5 or 6 times with like a lot more depth every time. But like I also have over 50 problems covered now, and if I'm going to do them 5 or 6 times each, 50, that'd be a whole year of problem coverage at 1 per week, and 5 or 6 times would mean 5 or 6 years.
So you need to make 2 or 3 per week.
I can't do that. I can't. That's another thing about circling back to that discussion of being a tech influencer, is that if you have your name and face on it and you're doing it in the middle of the week, your manager might have a little discussion about you about how it might be interfering with your on the date, like on the job performance.
But you can post it just in the middle of the week. You can make it.
So like there's some people like Primeagen who literally streams at 9 a.m. on a Monday. And that's like prime time for, I know that like if I did my live streams at 9 a.m. on Monday, it might actually be like really popular if I had done it like right at that time. That is kind of like a prime time of day is like 9 a.m. on the weekdays. But like if I had my face on my thumbnails and I was doing that, so I only do my live streams on Saturday nights, and that's also why is that like if I'm I'm interviewing you with my face in it, and if people start to have my face and name associated with my YouTube channel, I want to be able to say that like the content's only on Saturday nights, and so my manager has no right to
I see. So it's your personal time. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah,
it is.
Cool. What else do you have?
Yeah. All right. Well, so we got Roberto Vittio's book, and Understanding Distributed Systems. It's kind of like a briefer, more condensed version of designing data intensive applications. It does have a little bit more stuff of its own too. It does offer a little additional insight. I don't think I would really recommend it unless you're trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel like I am. A little bit of background on the author, just because that's important for system design apparently, is like, so I think this guy was at Microsoft for a while, and then he wrote this, and then he got hired as a principal engineer on DynamoDB over in AWS. So it's like writing a book might help you get those principal engineer roles.
Some kick, like pushing from. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, but you would not recommend this book.
I like it. I actually like it more. I think it's better.
Why do you like it?
It's thought out. He does know what he's talking about. He does know what he's talking about. He talked about CRDTs, I think, being strong eventual convergence possibly, and he also talked about chain replication, which is kind of like an alternative for consensus algorithms or something like that. It was that term is actually in DDIA, but I think this guy elaborated onto it and dug into it a little bit thoroughly.
Okay.
So I think he didn't just summarize DDIA. I think he did some of his own analysis on top of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, he did actually. He validated some of my ideas about what orchestration really is that. Oh God, there's a lot of people that are throwing around this term of orchestration versus choreography, and I think half the time they don't actually know what they're talking about. So when you're doing orchestration, and thank you Roberto Vittio for helping me for validating my thoughts here, is that when you're doing orchestration, one of the tools for that is AWS step functions.
Okay.
Another one is Netflix Conductor, and I think there's a few other ones out there. There's sometimes orchestration refers to infrastructure orchestration, which is like Kubernetes. Other times it's about the orchestration of these massive batch jobs, but you can also do OLTP orchestration, which I think is what AWS step functions are. And he helped me validate that ideas because he also thought the same thing.
How would you differentiate orchestration and choreography?
To understand choreography, you basically just have to understand what orchestration is, and then choreography is the absence of orchestration. So orchestration is when you look at the whole communication of these systems that it's when there's this series of tasks that are interdependent that have to happen in this like specific ordering. You can't just make all the API calls at once. It's you have all these different interdependent steps, and orchestration is when you recognize that beforehand and you have a single component that's organizing the whole thing and making and is and holds the logic for those steps being dependent upon each other, as opposed to the business logic for those steps happening in a specific order being within the services themselves that are being called. So alternatively to having an orchestration component like AWS steps or Netflix conductors, that you would just have these services that make a series of API calls just within their own business logic, and they hold that retry logic just within the code itself, rather than having it all grouped up into this one component of AWS steps in one code base that has that series of steps.
So we can say that like orchestration is kind of system, and choreography, it's like micro manipulation of different part of the
choreography
system.
is when you don't think out how these things are going to flow when you
Together.
don't think about the steps beforehand. You don't
Like a
have
system itself.
Yeah,
We don't think
it's
about
when
it.
you don't have it beforehand, and it's when it just kind of emerges organically.
So it's like choreography. It's a poor orchestration, or like a bad way to make orchestration.
It's when you don't know what orchestration is, and you've let it just kind of become a mess
But
organically.
is it possible that there are going to be a case when choreography is going to be better
Sure.
than
So
orchestration, like in a lower scale, for example?
So sometimes the extra steps just come in over time. So as you're adding in more features, you're going to have more steps brought into this chain of API calls that are dependent upon each other. And so if it's happening over time, then you're going to have choreography. But if like you knew ahead of time that you're going to have these dozens of API calls that have to happen in a certain way, then you have orchestration. It's when you recognize this technical debt of all these steps, you give it that name, orchestration, and you pull it out of the multiple services that have this disparate step logic, and you pull it all into one thing. That's when it's orchestration.
Gotcha. Do you want to continue with the books or jump to another topic? Let's briefly, can you briefly provide like a sentence for each?
I can do these ones pretty quick. So database internals, he actually talks about how B trees work. He also talks about 6 different flavors of Paxos. It's like the internals of like 3 different types of B trees, like B plus trees, B star trees, or like BW trees and stuff, and also 3 different ways to do distributed transactions internally within DB systems. So like this thing is deep, and it's actually internals.
When you recommend to read this book for who and when?
If you're going to interview with Google for like staff, or maybe if you like really want to nail your senior level interview with them, I don't know if you have to read it for a senior level interview with Google, but it might really help you. So that's a topic we're going to get to, is Google versus Facebook versus Amazon interviews. And this will,
yeah. So, and the last one is.
All right. So this is a theory book, distributed systems. It's actually, this is a textbook that you'd have in college if you're going to take a class on distributed systems. So Martin von Steen and Andrew Tannenbaum, one of these guys was the doctoral advisor for Warner Vogels, I believe, who was the CTO of Amazon. So like when he was getting his doctorate back in like the 90s or really, really early 2000s, so when he was getting his doctorate, he had a doctoral advisor, and that doctoral advisor wrote this book back in the 90s. And this is like before the term system design was coined. You would read about distributed systems instead, and this is one of the books that you'd read. It's really, really dry, to be honest. It's very dry, but like before you even had DDIA, this was the first edition of this book, I think, came out in the 90s.
What makes you so obsessed on system design? At what point did just like your mind just decided like, okay?
I realized that it was a skill set, and like you don't just learn it in college. Is that, you know, in computer science you have to be continually learning. I don't actually think that's distinctive to software engineering. Is that there's plenty of other professions where you have to continuously learn. It's where you have lifelong learning. Yeah, sure. And so it's you know, it's not distinctive to us, but we do have to continuously learn. And there's some skills that you just aren't going to get in college, and system design, I feel, is kind of one of them.
So you just decided, okay, you feel lack of knowledge, and that's why you decided I'm going for it.
Well, so I've kind of decided that I definitely want to grow as an individual contributor instead of a manager. And so like I'm kind of hard set on growing.
Technical.
I want to go as far as I can as an IC. I just don't really see myself as a senior manager or some kind of middle manager 10 years from now. I want to go as far as I can as an individual contributor.
Why?
I'm not passionate about soft skills, and if you're going to become a manager, soft skills is I kind of understand what managers do all day. I kind of know what they do, and you can't avoid having to use those soft skills yourself as even an IC, but I don't want it to be the main thing that I'm doing all day. I want the main thing that I'm doing all day to be working on services. It shouldn't be like trying to convince your stakeholders or working with trying to get this promotion shoehorned through the approval committee and stuff like that, or trying to inspire people to, you know, do their best work. It's I mean, you do have to do a little bit of influencing as an IC. It's unavoidable, but I don't want it to be my main thing.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You also probably would like to see a result of your work, like maybe not like physical result, but
I want to
like
build stuff.
Yeah.
So as a manager, it can be rewarding to grow people, and so you shouldn't really be, to my understanding, you shouldn't really become a manager unless you authentically enjoy growing people. I don't know. I'm probably gonna have to do mentoring too or something as I'm going up the ladder. But like, I don't know if I'm really passionate about that so much as like working on hard problems and building stuff.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I want to avoid the manager path, and as a consequence, I need to grow as an engineer. And like I'm a driven person. Some people don't care about promotions. Most people I feel really are driven, and they do want to get more promotions. And like, you have to learn system design if you want to get promoted.
Of
there's
course.
behavioral stuff too, and like I did try to dig into that with books and stuff too earlier on in my career, but the thing with soft skills is that a lot of the learning is purely through experience, and that the books can only do so much. You can't become really good at influence just by reading like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I actually have done some stuff in my own career to try and like get that hands-on experience with soft skills to become really good, including doing some volunteer work at the suicide hotline for like a whole year. Yeah, I wanted to learn influence. I really wanted to actually learn those soft skills. And in the process, that was actually what kind of helped me learn that soft skills are not actually what I'm super passionate about.
I see what you're saying.
And I definitely did really get into it, and I did enjoy that. And it can be fun. It's just not what I want to have as my like main thing I'm doing all day.
Got you, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's reasonable. Speaking about promotions, I know you have kind of story how you been on Focus at Amazon, and in 1 year you got promoted, and then you had like 10 on-site interviews in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So
can you
this
tell
is a fun story. So most people at Amazon, like, I think you mentioned the word pip culture once, is that there's this real fear of the performance management process, and that if you land on Focus, it's like a death note on your career at Amazon. And it's actually not like that. And I went from being on Focus to promoted in 1 year. Like
why they put you on Focus?
It's on you to be open-minded here, and I did try and force myself to be open-minded here. Is that like they just kind of my manager just kind of like showed me the data of like, hey, you're not performing. He showed me the data that like I'd only done like 5 commits in a period of like 3 months, and I was like, oh shoot, you know what? And I looked at my coworkers' commit history too, and I was like, You know what? You are right. Let's work on that. And in the final 6 months of that year, I had the highest commit throughput on my entire team.
So you just started committing more often, or you just did more work?
Well, of course you can game it and just do, one-line README changes, but like you can only get so far with that. So we can talk about gaming performance metrics a little bit. Is that it's really hard to pick a proper performance metric, but I actually do agree a lot with the commit throughput idea, particularly if it goes through.
Let's focus on your story. So like, you've been on Focus for underperforming in a team, right? And
I really did turn it around though, and I did it authentically without. Of course, there's a little bit of a mentality shift. Is that like as a new grad, sometimes you really want to pump out these really big commits, these really big code reviews, and you shouldn't be doing that. That is bad practice, and so that's why I'm okay with commit throughput being a performance metric, because it actually enforces better coding practices. But I'm okay with it as a performance metric, and like I said, I did authentically turn around. There's some of that mentality shift of like, big commits aren't good practice anyways, but it wasn't just pumping out a bunch of one-line changes. I did really authentically try and do it properly. Another thing I want to talk about is that at Amazon, they really do that when you're on Focus, they actually do have the best intents in mind. They don't just assume you're lazy. They assume that you really are working hard, but you're not working smart, or you're not doing the right work. Okay. So in my case, one of the several things that we improved also is that I was really focused on code quality, and I was actually like really a stickler in code reviews for the away teams that we might talk about a little bit. Okay. Is that I was a lot more focused on not making mistakes in prod than on just going ahead and pumping out some features.
I see what you're saying. So it was the delivery was a problem for you, kind of.
It was an authentic issue, and I did turn it around. But I was just not working smart. I think I was doing some work. I was just not working smart, and I also really appreciate Amazon management is a lot more open minded around that. They do assume that you are a hard worker, but you're just not doing the right work.
Well, yeah, probably your manager was a great manager.
She wasn't. It's
Or
more
good
like
manager,
disappointment, or like you're not really you're not pulling your weight here. I think it is just as painful for them as it is with you. I don't know if you've ever had to break up with someone that you're dating, but like it really sucks even if you're doing that yourself.
Yeah.
It's a painful process for them as well, and I think they're not. It's not just a bunch of nonsense when they're saying that it sucks for them too.
What was your mental state during the focus?
Of course it was shock. It did suck. The whole thing. So the whole thing. Yeah, it sucked. It did suck. But you've got to kind of be open minded about your manager actually working together with you and having the best intentions as well, which is a challenge. One of the biggest challenges when I was on Focus was actually having that open mind that my manager is actually my advocate.
Nice, I see. And then in the next year or like half year after you quit Focus process, you got promotion.
I got promoted a year after that whole thing happened, and so it's like I said, Focus is not a death note on your career. And it just closing Focus out on its own just did not feel like a success story to me, and so I really did actually want to stick around and get that promotion after being on Focus.
You got the promotion and you decided that you were ready to go to another company, or? I
know, right? It's most people do kind of hop right after promotion at Amazon. They at least find something else internally. I did.
What happens to people? Why they make a hope to another?
Why do they hop after promotion?
Yeah,
because they realize that they've kind of like hit. You get promoted, and then you're like, what's next? You know, it's like you just kind of chill and you're happy there for like a whole year. You usually are kind of like planning on your next step. And I've noticed one of the shortcomings of it, I do actually miss Amazon, but one of the shortcomings about it, I think, is that it's great for as an entry level. Nobody else throws you head first into distributed systems quite like Amazon does with their new grads. But for mid level, it's not quite as good. I feel it's very easy to just get stuck at L5 for like 5-8 years or something. Yeah. I've seen many cases of that.
I think because of the really specific problem of Amazon infrastructure and Amazon like process of work.
It's human processes. There's the bar for, I feel like there's maybe just a lot of gatekeeping for becoming a senior engineer. I've noticed actually in the industry that, so there's this concept of a terminal level, and wherever.
What is the concept? I'm not.
It's where you're not expected to get any more promotions. You're allowed to just chill at that level for as long as you want. So even at Amazon, I think as an L4, you're not allowed to just be an L4 for 5 years.
No.
They'll start managing you out.
No, because L4, it's not a career path.
Yeah.
L5, it's career path.
Yeah. And I've noticed, so L5 is a terminal level. You can be an L5 for 10 years on end.
Yeah.
You can't be an L5 for 10 years on end, but you can be you can be a mid-level engineer at Amazon for 5-10 years on end because it's terminal level. And I've noticed that usually at these terminal levels at companies, that tends to be where like the next promotion is really, really hard.
I see.
Getting promoted beyond that terminal level seems to be usually the tremendous hop at all these different companies. So at Amazon, it's mid-level. At Facebook, it's at E5, the senior level. And it seems like getting promoted to E6 is the one of the hardest hops for promotions at Facebook.
Yeah, and can you describe what was your interview process?
What, like when I was the how I got so many offers so quick.
Yeah.
Hold on. I didn't close out the discussion of like why I left so soon after my promotion is that like it was because I was gonna get stuck at mid level. I saw all my peers that were stuck at mid level for so long, and I was like, where do I go from here? And it was like I think I'd have to leave in order to actually make it to the next step. And so that's what started to kick off all those interviews. And I decided to put the effort into interviewing that the same effort that I put into my job at Amazon, I wanted to pour into the interview process. And it was early 2022. And so there were opportunities out there and I wanted to seize the opportunity. And so I was really hammering out those applications and I lined up 10 on-site interviews in 2 weeks, just a different on-site interview every single day for 2 weeks straight, turned it into 6 offers. System design skills were rather important there. I've gone even harder on the system design concept since then, but yeah, I did 10 on-site interviews.
Can you share companies which you
so I got an offer from Pinterest, Snapchat, DocuSign, Oracle, Microsoft. I actually don't even know what level it was at Microsoft because I actually turned down that offer before I even heard that. I just knew that they weren't going to offer as much as some of the other ones I had already gotten, and so I actually had kind of prematurely turned them down there.
Nice. It's just, yeah. But it was in 2021, right? During the market peak.
It was, early 2022 it was when it was super hot. It was like right around May 2022. I would not be able to do that today. I'm even worried about whether I'd be able to land any senior roles right now with how awful things are kind of going in the labor market over the last 6 to 9 months.
Well, what do you think about like frugality in our industry right now, and how Elon Musk setting this frugality?
Right.
Just operating with 20% of staff.
So he's operating with 20% of the headcount, and also like he cut down the number of microservices a whole bunch by like at least half or something like that. So what I want to talk about there is that at Amazon, there's that concept of KTLO versus business projects. They try to minimize how much you're spending on KTLO.
What is KTLO?
Keeping the lights on. It's on operations and just keeping things running.
Okay.
It's operational projects like making sure that you don't have an outage on Prime Day or on Black Friday.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so they try and like minimize the year-round KTLO and try and focus a lot more on those business projects of adding extra features. And so when you have that reduced headcount, that means you're going to be adding fewer features. And so I feel that Elon Musk, he's made some big sweeping changes to Twitter lately. And at that reduced headcount, you're not going to be focusing as much on those projects to grow worldwide revenue by 1%. You're going to be focusing on, hey, we're going to rebrand the website to x.com. And just wild big things that are going to like shake up the revenue
system.
you know what, we're going to have Twitter handle payments now, and so instead of doing 3 months of engineering labor on those little things, he's having you do something wild that's going to really reshape the face of the whole website. So you can do it. A lot of people like to point at the KTLO and gawk at his outages, but I feel that they probably would have also had some big outages even if they didn't cut all those headcount, and people just like to gawk at it more. So there's kind of 2 things in there. Is one, hey, they're just going to do fewer business projects, but also on those bringing down the number of microservices. That was something you like to brag about, and that's actually microservices are actually a tool for solving the problem of too many cooks in the kitchen. They have nothing to do with the performance of the systems themselves. When you're doing so many different services, it actually is more about being able to scale out your throughput of putting out features than anything else.
And have more different team, and each team will responsible. So it's like also a responsibility.
You're able to have more people doing work without having to worry about stepping on each other's feet. And that was actually something that happened really early on in the days of Amazon, is that there was this really famous email about a guy that he sent it at like 5 a.m. and tried to get this feature in. He was like, hey, please put this in the build, because there was probably like hundreds of people working on one little repo. And so that's how Amazon really became this service-oriented architecture company.
I see what you're saying. Okay, and the last one, what is your superpower?
I would say it's my just overzealous curiosity. It's my ferocious curiosity. There's some things that I think some of the members of my Discord group have commented on about me maybe needing to dig into a little bit more. It's just that I haven't been able to prioritize it yet. Some people complain about DDIA being so dry, and like that isolation chapter in DDIA, you're like, yeah, totally, that is pretty dry. But I made it interesting to myself because I have this huge curiosity for just trying to learn absolutely everything. Just everything is somehow fascinating to me, I feel.
That's just great. Okay. Thank you for joining me today. Okay, guys, you can subscribe or not subscribe my channel. This is your life ruled by yourself. Thank you, Michael, for being today. And it's just interesting conversation. You're a super talented guy. Yeah, thank you for sharing a lot of value today and your whole bags of experience you have.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.